Whenever we study the anatomy of the eyeball or study ophthalmology and eye pathologies, few terms that we commonly come across are anterior chamber, posterior chamber, anterior segment, anterior cavity, and posterior cavity. Many times we get confused among these terms. In this video, let us clarify the understanding of these terms. So if we take a cross section of the eyeball, then we will get two very important structures which will act as a landmark in our understanding of these terms. The first structure is this one. This is known as the iris. It acts as a diaphragm and controls the amount of light that will fall on the lens of the eye. This brings me to the another term that we should know, or another structure, which is the lens of the eye, the main or the key component of the optical system of the eye. Now, once we have understood these two things, now we will try to understand two important terms. One is anterior segment, another one is posterior segment. Anterior segment is the front third of the eye that includes structures in front of the vitreous humor. That means if we take the posterior surface of the lens as the landmark or the place from where vitreous humor starts, then this part, that is the part from the which is in front of the vitreous humor, all this is known as a part of anterior segment. This anterior segment is also known as anterior cavity. Then whatever we have from the posterior surface of the lens or the beginning of the vitreous, all that region is known as the posterior segment. Or posterior cavity. Now the story becomes really interesting. Now this anterior segment can be again divided into two parts based on the position of the iris. Now the region in front of the iris, that means this much region, this much, can be termed as anterior chamber. And the region behind the iris is known as the posterior chamber. Right? So if I try to simplify all this idea, then there will be a simple diagram or simple demarcation that will help you. So if I draw a complete line, straight line, in that straight line, if we put a lens in the middle, then whatever lies behind the lens is all posterior segment. Whatever lies ahead of the lens is anterior segment. Within the anterior segment, I will have something known as the iris. And whatever lies ahead of iris, that is your anterior chamber. And whatever lies posterior to iris is your posterior chamber. So by now, I hope you have understood very well what is the concept of anterior chamber, anterior segment, anterior cavity, and posterior cavity.